talking matter and thread with Nathan Dyck of Nanoleaf. This is MacVoices. MacVoices is supported by Collective, an all-in-one financial solution for the self-employed. Learn more at collective.com. Today's MacVoices is supported by Kolide. Kolide ensures only secure devices can access your cloud apps. It's zero trust, tailor-made for Okta. Book a demo today at kolide.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, there's a lot of confusion going around right now as we make a transition from what we have currently been using in home automation and device control to the Matter standard. And exactly what that means to you, to me, for legacy devices, for new devices, how it all fits together, it's all kind of confusing. We reached out, and Nathan Dyck, the Chief Product Officer, for Nanoleaf, is joining us to try to make a little sense of it, I should say, and try to give us all what we need to know to make use of Matter. Nathan, welcome. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me on the show.
I really appreciate it because we talked to Jimmy just a little bit about this at CES in January, but it seems to be nothing but more confusing as we go along, at least for those of us that don't, have maybe a casual passing interest. But we also have lights and devices and speakers and all kind of things that we've built our home automation systems up with, and now we have a new standard. So I'm going to just sort of turn you loose and let you tell me what we need to know about Matter and where the problem areas are and where we don't need to worry about things are.
Right. Yeah, sure. I suppose starting from the basics, how I would describe Matter to someone who's never heard of it before. I typically like to call it a language. So it's aimed to be the common language for the smart home moving forward. There's probably the most buy-in I've ever seen, 10 years working in smart home now, of any language in the smart home realm. So its prospects for becoming the single language that everyone is speaking all the time is very high. This idea of a language lets things like the Apple HomePod or Amazon's Echo or Google's Nest Mini or basically all of these smart speakers, as well as these home automation platforms, to be able to control your devices in a single way. Another really helpful analogy I like to use with people is calling Matter the foundation, right? You think of your house, it has a foundation below it. It's what everything is built on top of. Foundation is super, super important for your home. But at the end of the day, you don't see it, right? It's below the surface. It kind of is the bedrock of what your house is built on. What people care about is the actual house, right? So this is where Matter being the foundation gives that kind of common place for people to gather, around the language concept. But it's still up to product makers like us to build some interesting things on top of it. So our first products that work with Matter are something we're calling our Nanoleaf Essentials. So we've got a light bulb, a light strip, a number of light bulbs that are coming out, floodlights, spotlights, downlights. So those are all kind of the basics, the essentials. That's why we call them that. I think, Matter moving forward is this language to build on top of and to build some interesting features. So I think other pieces, and maybe I can let you jump in with if you have questions around those intro concepts, I suppose.
Well, I love the concept of a language because that makes a lot of sense, that these devices need to talk to each other. We need to interact with the devices. And so thinking about it as a language really appeals to me. But that opens up a dozen questions about, can it translate, or do things have to get translated into the Matter language from existing devices or new devices coming out?
So I think it depends on the device. There's a couple of concepts in Matter that do build on translation. So the concept of a bridge is this Matter concept that allows older smart home devices, maybe there's Zigbee, maybe there's Z-Wave, maybe there's some proprietary protocol where they're either impractical or impossible to update to work directly over Matter. Those can use bridges. So maybe it's just a single update to a hub from another vendor. So there's prominent companies that are taking that approach. It is kind of, I would say, an intermediate glue, but also I think there's a place where that, it's an important way to let innovation thrive, right? If there's a better way of doing something that goes through a central hub and that the use case makes sense, that's cool. Our perspective, and I think what we really like about Matter, is that it's built around the Internet Protocol, or IP. So this is something that Wi-Fi was built on from day one. It's a really good reason why a lot of the very interesting smart home devices you see are always Wi-Fi today. But Wi-Fi has drawbacks, right? So the biggest drawback for Wi-Fi is power consumption and battery life. So if you want to deploy or put a motion sensor into your home, similar to what we're about to do with Sense Plus later this year, to do that on Wi-Fi, you're looking at very, very short battery lives. So basically, I just installed a door lock in my home, unsolicited. Or how does the expression go? The Schlag and Code Plus. It's great. I really love it but it works on Wi-Fi, or it works on this new technology called Thread. So Thread is a technology that we've adopted. We've shipped a number of products over the past 3 years in our Essentials line. So Thread, we started with HomeKit over Thread, and now we're moving to Matter over Thread. So Thread, as a technology, it's kind of like the telephone line that you talk, right? So if Matter is the language, Thread is how that language gets from A to B. So whether it's a cell phone, whether it's a hardline phone or satellite phone, all of these different technologies can work the same. You still use the same language over the top of them. But the power of Thread is low power, long range. It's a mesh technology, which means you can have a light bulb in room A and you can have something in your backyard that basically connects to your light bulb instead of connecting directly to, say, for example, a Wi-Fi access point. So it's a really powerful technology, moving into the future for smart homes. So coming back to your question about, bridges and are these things that need to be translated, with Thread, in principle, the answer is no, right? You can have a Thread device, it connects up to that Thread network. There is still a component that's needed called a border router, which I think it's different from a hub in the sense that it just routes any traffic that's IP. So it doesn't care whether that traffic is speaking HomeKit, doesn't care whether it's speaking Matter, or it doesn't care if it's speaking, other proprietary languages. So we actually have our own proprietary language we built, which kind of supports our own use cases. We like to move a little faster than certain things do move. I think Matter as a standard has moved very fast in standard world, but in product development world, still relatively slow. But the power of IP gives us that. So Thread gives us IP, and Matter is built on IP, so they kind of all come together in this really harmonious package.
Okay, so now you've brought Thread into the conversation. So let's do some analogies, or let's do some clarifications.
Sure.
So let's just do it this way. Let's say I buy a brand new home. I walk in, there's nothing there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to set up a Wi-Fi network to be able to use Thread, or could I, in theory, just have no internet connectivity? And because if I understand, IP is a protocol, I think, in this situation. And so would I be setting up a Thread network essentially in that new house without needing a Wi-Fi router?
I think in theoretically you could do that. I think there will be use cases that emerge that will. So Thread, the benefit is you could have a button or something that is a switch operating on a battery connect directly to a light bulb, and all it needs is that local thread connection, and it can do things that are interesting. Today in practice, I think the use cases that many people are really concerned about or interested in, I should say, are things like, home automation, where you have a hub controlling schedules, or you have a hub controlling more advanced automations. Smart speakers is a very common application. I like to tell the story of Nanoleaf. Basically, I think the advent of voice control is what really pushed us into smart home. But it's not everything, to be clear. And smartphone connectivity today, smartphones don't speak threads. They always connect up to a Wi-Fi network, which is the most flexible place to kind of get to other things, whether it's the internet or whether it's things on your local network like your smart speaker or thread devices. So that's where the border router piece is actually a really important piece.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that was not my best example, but it was the first one that came to mind. But because
sure.
I mean, theoretically, right now, I could have where I live, I could have a Comcast connection coming into my home. I could have a Verizon connection coming into my home. I could put Wi-Fi routers on both of those and have both of those networks operating at the same time. And so that's where I was kind of trying to go as far as is Thread utilizing a completely different network, for lack of a better term, or is it just piggybacking on the Wi-Fi to get out to the internet and do the interesting things you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it has its own radio. So Wi-Fi devices can't communicate directly with Thread devices. There are a number of products that have both. So Eero routers are a great example of Wi-Fi and Thread. There's a number of other products that have Wi-Fi and Zigbee. So the interesting thing is the underlying protocol behind Thread is IEEE 802.15.4. It's the same protocol that goes under Zigbee. So where does that matter? Pretty much any device that has Wi-Fi and Zigbee might be eligible to support Thread, depending on whether the chipsets in there are kind of enabled properly, or the company is interested in making that transition. So there's a lot of hardware that already has support, and then the software is the piece that is coming into view now that companies like Amazon shipped their Matter over Thread implementation. Was it last week now? And that opens up the Echo 4th Gen as Thread border routers. So that's the other kind of nuanced point that I skipped over. These Thread border routers, they exist in a lot of different products. They might be in your Wi-Fi router. They might be in your modem. They might be in your wall panels. So like this thing that you see behind me is our shapes line. So our controllers that for the shapes have Thread border router capabilities in there.
Okay. Well, so obviously Nanoleaf is already doing interesting things like what's behind you. I mean, you've always done interesting things like what's behind you, but now you're taking advantage of some of these to do even more interesting things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I as far as those interesting things are concerned, I would say, the reason that we came into Threads was really for our Sense Plus line. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but with battery operated devices needing longer battery life because users don't want to change the batteries every three months, Thread was a really important technology. And the gap that we saw in smart lighting was that voice control is great. Not everyone wants to yell out there across the room every time they want to change the lights or adjust the color or brightness. Smartphone control, really important. It's like miles better than, I don't know if you've ever seen those grid controllers for colored lights. They've got like a little, 4x6 set of colored dots that you can press, which is something, but smartphones give you much better, control over the UX. But the automation piece is still something that's really complex, really, I think at a high bar for someone to access. And even then, all the potential of lighting automation even hasn't been realized with, the patchwork of technologies you can use today. So coming back to Thread and Sense Plus, what we really wanted to build was automation out of the box, right? So you have a motion sensor that's integrated with what I'll call control points, basically a wireless dimmer switch, and that gets paired up with a light bulb. So, like you said, if you were building a new home, would you just create a Thread network? I mean, you could, and we're actually, we want to get to that point. But basically, the motion sensor and the light bulb, the idea there is automation out of the box where lights are on when you're there, they're off when you're not. If it's bright in the room, lights don't need to be on, and all of that stuff just works. So that's really where we see the future of Threads bringing us.
That's so. You're going to have some hardware to accomplish that. You're going to have to have some kind of motion sensor to know I'm in the room. You're going to have some kind of light sensor to know whether it's sunny or it's dark. Is that? Do you see that are those being separate pieces that have to be purchased, or are they going to be all built in some fashion to a device or devices, or are the devices themselves the sensors?
Right. So our Sense Plus wireless dimmer is all built in, right? So it's got you can turn the lights on and off like a traditional switch. It has a motion sensor built in. It has a light sensor built in. And that was really important to us. We've seen for many years, you can buy motion sensors on their own. You can buy light sensors on their own. I think in the past, just being connected and, connecting up to a platform was a good value proposition. But for us, we really wanted to put that together because, I think regardless of how your lights get controlled, your still natural tendency is to go to the switch. If not all the time, at least some of the time, right? So we want to get to a place where you don't have to touch that. But for the intermediate, we know that people want to touch it and want to be able to, make some fine adjustments, turn it on and off if they need to, if it's, not in the right configuration. But so there's the wireless dimmer switch, which goes on your wall. It's battery operated. We also have a wired dimmer switch, which is essentially the same product. It's just a hardwired smart switch. You can convert any lighting in your room into a smart dimmable light.
MacVoices is supported by Kolide at kolide.com/MacVoices. Clicking on the wrong link can cause you plenty of headaches if it's just you. But if it's your company, the possibility of clicking a wrong link is multiplied by the number of users, right along with the headaches. Your users don't mean to create a problem, but they have other things on their priority list. That's why Kolide works so well for Okta users. You can get your entire fleet to 100% compliance. If a device isn't compliant and tries to log in, it can't. The user is provided with the information on what needs to be done. If they do it, great. If not, they're blocked. Immediate, helpful device compliance that secures your company. Without Kolide, there's nothing to stop an unsecure device. With Kolide, unsecure devices don't have a chance to cause issues. And this is all built to work seamlessly with Okta. Zero trust architecture and 100% device compliance. That means fewer support tickets and less frustration all around. Just what the doctor ordered. Visit kolide.com /MacVoices to learn more or book a demo. That's Kolide, KOLIDE.com /MacVoices. Kolide.com /MacVoices. Thanks to Kolide for supporting MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by Collective, an all-in-one financial solution for the self-employed. Are you one of the many who make some, most, or all of your money freelancing or running a small solo business? Maybe you're a photographer, a content creator, or consultant. You love the flexibility of what you do, but hate the crushing busy work that every solo entrepreneur has to deal with. All that paperwork, from business formation to taxes and everything in between. If that's you, then you need to know about Collective at collective.com. Collective is the all-in-one financial solution for freelancers, contractors, and self-employed entrepreneurs, especially if your profits total $60,000 or more per year. Collective can handle your taxes, bookkeeping, accounting, and even payroll, along with corporate formation and compliance paperwork. They have the perfect mix of technology and human experts to help guide you and take away the busy work. Now, this is important. If you've already made money this year, but don't have an S Corp election, right now through June 30th, Collective can save you thousands of dollars on taxes in 2023 because they're able to backdate your S Corp election to January 1st. And that can mean a savings of, on average, $10,000 per year on taxes. So don't wait. Go to collective.com and save on taxes this year, and have someone who knows what they're doing handle your setup, accounting, bookkeeping, and taxes, even your personal taxes. That's collective.com. Thanks to Collective for their support of MacVoices. Wow. So, part of me wants to throw away everything I have or relegate it to the basement or some other secondary location and just go with some of this new stuff that has all these capabilities, because frankly, that's where I use mine the most. So, is that the way we should start thinking about this? That don't buy anything unless it supports Matter and Thread, or is it a little premature to do that just yet?
It's a pretty broad, sweeping question. What I would say, I've described Matter as a foundation here. If there are companies that are introducing new products without any interest in Matter, and those products are kind of like you would have baseline expectation of being able to turn them off and on with a smart assistant, I would question that. But having said that, there's a lot of really interesting products. So I'll use Mill, for example. Matt Rogers, one of the co-founders from Nest. They built this smart composter basically for your kitchen. I could see places where that integrates with Matter, but it's pretty, it's not their main value proposition. So that product, they've built probably their own custom stuff. Maybe they have Matter on their roadmap somewhere. I have no idea. I don't know them closely, but that product's great. And should that product use Threads? It's probably not necessary. It needs a lot of power to do composting. So Wi-Fi is fine. It's sitting in your kitchen. You almost certainly have Wi-Fi there. So, I think there's different use cases that are going to make more sense for Thread and for Wi-Fi to live side by side, basically.
So you said something there that brought back a memory and I'm not going to call a name because I'm not sure that my recollection is correct, but there was a major manufacturer that did, after indicating they would be supporting Matter, I believe, if I remember correctly, pulled back on that for the time being. And so that leads me to wonder, how is the adoption to Matter and to Thread going? Is it inevitable, or is it just a matter of cost? What's the situation there?
I think there's definitely a lot of different pieces. If you can imagine, to go back to my foundation analogy, if you were to replace the foundation in a home that you've already built, like that's not a small cost. Highly complex, you might have to simply tear down the home and build it up again. So there's definitely that consideration around, products that companies have. I think the company that's been cited most frequently is Wemo. So they've got they pull back. I think their specific words is they want to make sure they can differentiate, which I think is a great answer, right? You have Matter as its foundation. It gives a baseline for things like turning off a light bulb or setting color or setting, dimming them, right? Those are things that are table stakes for products. So if you don't have a clear way to differentiate that and go above and beyond, then I think that's a problem to introduce some new products into market. I think in the past, just being connected, just having a smartphone app was like, oh, this is brand new and novel and, useful, sure, but it's not everything. So I think it's definitely scary for some companies, but for us, we know where we want to differentiate. Our wall panels, they're definitely different. We've got technologies that we're building around Thread called Sync Plus, and then Sense Plus, which is what I was mentioning around the motion sensing piece. So those are differentiators that we're looking to continue to build on.
Yeah, in some ways, you guys have it easy because of so many of the things you do that there is either no competition or very limited competition, both in design and availability and flexibility. So, but I mean, okay, I don't want to pick on Wemo here, but they've made that decision. They've made that announcement. So that means that when I go to buy something that I want to use to put on a lamp to turn it on and off, I'm going to be a little bit hesitant to buy that product from them or from anybody that doesn't support some of these new protocols and these new capabilities. So in some ways, they're almost doing a reverse differentiation that is not going to benefit them.
Yeah. I mean, there's a common effect called the Osborne Effect where I can't remember the product type, but basically they had a version 1 of this product and they announced the version 2 and suddenly no one bought the version 1. This doesn't align perfectly, but yeah, I can see, if you can't support this new technology, any of the products that you currently have that don't have it, there's a bit of doubt cast on whether they'll have the highest potential moving into the future. But on the flip side, if you have a product and you have a need and an existing product fills that need, I think there's places where that still makes sense. So that kind of factors into, I think, to companies' decisions.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you, because at the very least, some of those things that don't support those protocols are going to slide into the legacy category and therefore end up having to be priced less. So I might be able to get that controller for that lamp, if that's all I ever want to do with it, less expensively. But that doesn't feel like a good investment to me. But that's me, I'm looking for that forward compatibility, not the legacy compatibility.
Right.
What advice would you give to folks who are looking to, get into this, either add to what they already have or maybe are finally getting around to playing with some home automation and some of these smart devices?
Yeah, well, I mean, shameless plug. I think they should look at our Nanoleaf Essentials line as an entry point. It's a smart light bulb, smart light strips, various others, types through your home. They work on Bluetooth, so if you don't have a Threadboard router yet, you can actually use that to start with and then upgrade to a Threadboard router later. But I think, the power of Matter and that kind of ecosystem automation that you get from Apple, Amazon, Samsung, Google, all of these different platforms that have adopted Matter, that'll be best used with a board router. So, those exist in a lot of different smart speakers already. And like I said, our wall panels have that functionality built in. So if you're looking for something beautiful on your wall, that's a great entry point. That's yeah.
I probably get emails if I don't ask you about this. But how about HomePods and HomePod Minis right now from Apple? Where do they fit into this as far as their capabilities, what's built in?
Yeah, so I mean, like the HomePod Mini is a big story or a big part of our story. Our first Thread product was over HomeKit. I mentioned it briefly earlier. So we released that pretty much alongside of the HomePod Mini in 2020. So yeah, our products work great with the HomePod Mini in the Apple ecosystem. The newest HomePod 2nd Gen also has thread border routing capabilities built in. So that is a great place to open up those capabilities. And depending on the model you're looking at for the Apple TV, that also has thread border routing built in.
So I may already have it in my home, and a lot of people may already have it, and they don't even know it.
Exactly. Yeah, and this is where I think we're thinking about how to educate people and kind of make that known, and we're trying to push the industry to do the same. It's one of those things that's challenging to really sell the technology. I think it really needs to be paired with a great use case. So with the HomePod Mini, plugging back into the Apple fan base, yeah, voice control and all of the features that come along with the Apple automation ecosystem, it's pretty solid.
I agree with you completely. There's not enough education out there. I mean, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you. Is it is confusing, and all these all these terms get thrown around. And unfortunately, there was this rush to home automation, and all of us geeks said, boy, we can do this and we can do that. We were doing it with Apple's HomeKit. We were doing it with Amazon's technology. Then Google got in the mix, and then everything got really confused. And you're trying to bridge it over with things like if this, then that to try to make it work. But then if your internet goes out and it just, it's just a bit of a meltdown, I think, where people just threw up their hands in frustration. And I'm hoping that some of this, will get us back to being able to play with this stuff properly and not feel like you might be wasting your money or your time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, to throw another analogy into the mix, basically the smart home up until now has been what I call a patchwork, right? It's everyone's got these different quilt pieces. They're putting them together, and software is great to do that. But it creates a lot of different places where, the seams don't align perfectly and they look not perfect. So Matter, as a contrast, is aiming to become a fabric, basically. It's actually a term that's used in the specification. And it brings everything together. It weaves them in the same way, and this fabric is something that can be beautiful. So,
unfortunately, your patchwork analogy is probably what I have here. So I would really
it's definitely what I have at home.
Yeah, yeah. I'd really like to get this straightened out. So what's Nanoleaf up to? I mean, again, we talked to Jimmy at CES, and he was cluing us in on some of the things that were being brought out then. You guys just went from what might be described in retrospect as some pretty simple lighting panels to all sorts of interesting and exciting things that you can do within the Nanoleaf ecosystem.
Yeah. Yeah. So, some of the products that we announced at CES are coming up quick. So Nanoleaf 4D, it's basically it augments your TV screen. It's a backlight, but more than that, the camera can actually extend your viewing experience into your room. So whether that's the Nanoleaf Essentials through Sync Plus, our light panels, or our shapes through Sync Plus, or the actual, backlight light strip that goes behind your TV that gets packaged in. So that's coming up quick. Nanoleaf Skylight, it's basically a take of putting panels into your ceiling, but the ceiling light is actually designed with proper functional lights. So it's a pretty interesting product. Not sure if you got to see it at CES, but we got great reception, showing that off. So that's coming up pretty soon. We've got some more to share pretty soon, I think, on what's beyond.
I think we'll all be looking forward to it. And I want to invite you back, or whoever you think is appropriate, to come back when some of those things are actually on the market and talk a little bit more about them, because I've got some Nanoleaf products here that I absolutely love. And it's always one of my favorite stops at CES to see what you've come up with next. So
Thank you.
The website where folks can go to learn all about all the Nanoleaf technology and all the options you all do is?
It's nanoleaf.me.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for the time and the explanations. I love your analogies because they make it a little bit easier to work our way through and understand, I guess, where any of us are in this transition as we move forward to something that hopefully becomes a standard.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for having me on. It was great chatting, and hopefully see you at our next booth.
I wouldn't. Well, count on it. If I'm there and you're there, I'll definitely be stopping by. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Hopefully this gave you just a little bit more information on Matter and Thread and why you need to be paying attention to it. And the good news is that you may already have some of that hardware in your home, so you can just run right out to Nanoleaf and start taking advantage of what they offer. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.